All right. Goldie Chan, welcome to Making Business Personal. How are you?
Hi, I'm doing so good. It's been so many years since
Oh,
we've last talked.
it's been a crazy many years. First of all, I love the double hand. Like that was phenomenal. I don't think I've seen that in a long
Yeah.
time. So let's figure this out. Okay. So
Yes.
we didn't speak before this. I never speak to my guests before the interview because I don't want to get good stuff just on a phone call. I mean, if the world
Yes.
doesn't hear it, did it really happen?
Did it
So
really happen? Was it on this podcast? No.
so we met. First of all, we met honestly like less than a week after I moved to Los Angeles.
Really?
Yeah, I moved here. I auditioned
Yeah.
for the series that you were producing
Yeah.
called
Cost of capital.
Cost of Capital. Thank you.
Yes.
Called Cost of Capital, and um, it might have been it. Honestly, it might have been the third day I lived in LA.
Wow. I will say this, as you obviously booked it, you were so good. I think that there were a few people that auditioned that we had to, really make those decisions about those characters where we're like, is it this? Right. And you pair people up and you see like, what is the chemistry between this person and this person? Especially, I remember for your character, you had two subordinates. If you
Hmm.
remember that, you
Yeah.
were the boss of these two younger guys, and we had to pair a couple of different guys together because we wanted to make sure that their chemistry was good because they were doing so many scenes together. But I remember you auditioned, and I forget if I was the person that said this or the other producer on the project said this, but we just kind of looked at each other. We're like, oh yeah, that's him. That's the character, and it was such an easy. So thank you for that, because we had so many roles, as you know, for that series, and it was
Yeah.
such. You were exactly what we needed for that very serious financial drama, which is always fun for me to think about. That's the one thing that I produce. I think people think I've worked on a lot of like very silly things over the years, but that was like a very serious financial drama that you were
Yeah.
in.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
it was kind of like the minor league version of Billions. You know
Yes.
that show?
Yes.
But just so you know, one of the guys who played my two subordinates, Josh
Yeah.
Shibata, is one
Yes.
of my closest friends. Now, we met on
What?
that, and then like a year later,
Yeah.
he called me. He had an audition for something big,
Yeah.
a massive movie. It might
Love
have
it.
even been a Marvel or something. And he
Love
said,
it.
"Hey, can you coach me on this audition?" And we
Yeah.
got reacquainted,
See, you
and
were his boss in real life too.
yeah, right. Yeah. Yeah. If yeah, so Josh is one of my closest friends now.
Oh my gosh,
And
I love that. That was,
yeah.
and I what I really liked too was it not only because of course age doesn't necessarily matter when it comes to acting, um, and how much acting experience you have, right? But I think you were definitely out of the trio. You were certainly the one that had the most, I would say, experience and training. And so it was funny because they were your junior subordinates in that particular role. But I also felt like you were also very kind in coaching them and helping them with their scenes, because a lot of their scenes were them kind of like fumbling around and being, a little bit of idiots, very much on purpose. And you were that senior person who had all the wisdom that you were able to impart on your junior team members, which I'm sure is still true today. So,
Well, that's very kind of you. You and the director. I really liked the director. I don't remember his name.
yeah.
I can't remember his name, but he was a really nice guy, good director. Uh,
Yeah.
but he made one of the big mistakes that directors make with me, which is like, "Hey, Jason, listen, we'll shoot it, and then the next couple scenes, just do whatever you want." And I did. It's like
But that was what was I really, and we shot that so many years ago, but it was such I
that was
really like
2011.
2011. Yeah, we did such good improv, I want to say, on that set. And it was so, to me, to this day, for the budget that we had, which I won't disclose publicly, but it wasn't a lot of money,
Mm,
obviously. It was, but we got so many great sets. We got so many
yeah.
great places. Like we shot partially on a yacht. I remember we had all those very specific office spaces. It wasn't just someplace we redressed to look like we were shooting an actual offices and actual
Yeah.
conference rooms, actual fake, strip club.
Oh my gosh, the strip club.
Yeah, I don't
Yeah,
know if
yeah,
you
yeah, yeah.
remember that, but
I
it
do. I
it's
remember that
it's
vividly.
it was just such a fun to me, that was such a fun project, to work on, and yes, and it was great to have you on it.
Well, I'm shocked to hear that that was the first thing you produced because you seemed like such a pro, and I mean what I'm about to say, I mean as the highest compliment.
Okay.
Most of the people who listen to the podcast, not that who knows? I mean, I see my demographics, but I don't know what they do for a
Right,
living unless I know who that
right,
person is.
right,
But most of them aren't in entertainment.
right.
And so for those of you who are not in entertainment, the producer on a TV show or in a film is one of two things either someone who really knows what they're doing or they just have a lot of money or they're someone's family member. Okay. And you seemed like you really knew what you were doing and I was scared
Thank
of you.
you,
And I think you're like
thank you.
15 years younger than I am and I was scared of you. I was like, I'm not crossing this Goldie girl. you
I
you
just
had this
remember, I don't know if you remember
ice.
this, we actually had a fire on set. I don't know if you know this. We
Oh,
had
I
an
wasn't there for that.
electrical fire on one of the shoot days, and I remember one of the PAs was just sobbing in my arms, and I'm just doing this, as I'm doing this, right? Like, the other hand is I'm like, "Go put out the fire." Like, I'm trying to mouth that quietly, and then I thought, "Oh, is this what a producer's job is?" It's like
Mhm.
literally putting out the proverbial fire, right? The emotional fire, but also putting out an actual
The
truly
fire.
physical like there was like an
Yeah.
actual fire that and thankfully, we had insurance, all the good things. But yes, that was I had produced something a lot less serious than that right before it. And then this one was kind of my big producery, like jump in, let's try this, let's see what happened. And as we're like quite literally on this podcast about business and not on entertainment, life just takes you in such fun and different directions. So I know I definitely moved away from that world of necessarily producing a ton. I just was co-producer on a short animated film, but I don't do a lot of it anymore. I think that's
Yeah.
also by nature of being in Los Angeles. You get pulled
Well,
onto
they
things.
pull you back in though. That's the
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
Two things about what you just said. One,
Yeah.
this is a business podcast. Oh, by the way, Atticus, my dog, is in my office right now. So every now and
Yay.
again, you might hear a large snore
Yay.
or something like that.
Yay.
But uh, it is a business podcast, but
Yeah.
entertainment is a business, and that's why they call it
Entertainment is a
show
business.
business. And
100%.
and uh, my clients all over the world always want to hear about what's happening in LA and in New York because they're
Oh,
curious about it. But here's something that almost everybody has in common, whether
yeah.
they're on the left side of the aisle or the right side of the aisle politically, whether they work for a not for profit, or they work at a global Fortune 50 company.
Right.
When they get home from work, they watch TV. When
Yes.
they're in the car, they listen to music or podcasts
Right.
or the news, which is entertainment. Let's be
Right. They
honest.
consume the entertainment.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The first thing people cut in schools in the United States is the arts. But what's the first thing
Right.
you do when you get home? You consume arts,
You consume the arts. Yeah.
so it's a big part of business. It's inspiration for people and things like that. But the other thing is that I think a lot of artists would do better if they learned a little more about business. And I think a lot of people who are consumed with business would do a little bit better if they invested a lot of their time in the arts,
Well,
you
I
know?
think also people just having hobbies or other interests or having come from other parts of the world in terms of work, right? I think that that is always so helpful instead of being only you've only done this super tiny thing for the entirety of your life. It also, of course, makes you just more interesting as a person to
Yeah.
have these little stories and to have these little side quests that you've done, or quite frankly, just even just a complete pivot of your career. If you start off focusing, I will say that when we were making that show at the time, I was like, this is my career. And I was just like, I'm gonna be a producer. Like the dream is to become a showrunner on maybe a dramatic show. Like the
Mhm.
dream for me at the time, I was like, I want to do producing. Like I want this to be the dream. And I think it was funny because ironically, I had moved to LA to do acting for a little bit. And then I discovered producing and I thought, oh, okay. this is you know, this is actually what I'm meant for is producing. And then producing for me has become project management, has become a lot of other business things that
Yeah.
have been really helpful. But yeah, I definitely started out thinking, I'm gonna be an actor. And then I realized, oh, I don't really, I was getting sent out all those auditions and doing all that stuff. And I was like, oh, I don't auditioning is maybe never super fun, but I
Mhm.
think that you have to be really motivated as an actor. You have to be level 50 on a 10 scale motivation to do it.
Well, that's the thing about acting and auditioning. They're 2 different skills.
Yes.
There's people who are great at auditioning, but they're not very good actors,
Right.
and the other way around.
Right.
And, you know, producing and directing, a lot of people ask me how I made that journey
Yeah.
from being an actor to being a director and a producer to
Right.
now
Right.
running a large consulting firm. Well, not a
Right.
large consulting firm. I have a large amount of
Very
clients, but
large.
I'm a very small consulting firm. Um,
Very large.
you know this. If you
Yeah.
direct a TV show or a
Right.
massive play, something like
Right.
that, you are in control of hundreds of people. You're
Right.
managing multiple unions.
Right.
You've got to manage the egos of incredibly talented people. You've
Right.
got to align people towards your vision when
Right.
they have their own vision. That's senior leadership 101.
Yes. Yes. And you're managing, I think, so many pieces, so much paperwork, which is what you just described. So many people. So you got the
Mhm.
pieces, the people, and the paperwork.
Yeah.
And those three definitely translate to running your own business. So I do my own agency now as well, Warm Robots, where we do a lot of social branding work, oftentimes internal, the kind of stuff you just don't see publicly, which is really fun and exciting for me. But a lot of that was very helpful to be on the ground in the weeds, learning how to do that on a movie set or behind the scenes with. I think at one point I just had like hundreds of actor releases because you just have to have that for even the extras and things like that. So,
Yeah.
and now, sometimes that'll be if I do say I work on an influencer campaign and I need those sign off sheets from influencers I work with, it's the same thing, but just slightly different paperwork.
Well, imagine this.
Yeah.
Imagine you are the CEO or the president of the Acme company, right?
Right.
And you make everything. You're a
Right.
Fortune 500 company, and you have a massive initiative and a massive thing, and you have to put all these things together. And this is going to maybe not make or break your organization, but it's going
But
to
a little
determine
bit.
if 25% of your staff gets laid off, right? That kind of thing.
Right. Right.
Well, the public never sees what happened, but if you're making a movie or a TV show, everyone sees it.
Right.
So if it's a flop, the world knows that it's a flop.
Right. Right.
That's a lot of pressure. So
Right.
you took that expertise and walk me through this, because I remember when I first started seeing on LinkedIn and even back when I was, looking on Facebook and stuff like that,
Yeah.
that you had started doing other things. I was like, "Oh,
Yeah.
Goldie's made a move."
Yeah.
What was the first move? Was it towards the branding or the social media? What was the first move?
Yeah. So I would say that I moved back. So I spent a little bit of time in Los Angeles, which is when we did the show, and then I moved back to the Bay Area. And then by nature of it being the Bay Area, I went back into tech and went to marketing and social media very specifically. So I was doing a lot of building communities. So I was growing communities for tech startups and different large companies, and in that period of time, I climbed up that marketing ladder, all the way to the head of marketing. And it was funny because then that journey ironically brings me to LinkedIn because I remember I just left a head of marketing job. I was taking a month off, and which I very generously called for myself a sabbatical, which it wasn't. It just was me being unemployed for a month. But it sounds better.
I know some people have been on sabbatical for 3 or 4 years, you know?
Right. So some people have been on an unintended sabbatical. Yikes. And my heart goes out to everybody who is on a sabbatical they don't want to be on. But that was a very specific, I chose to be on that. So I was going to take a month off and then really hit that job search hard. And in that month off, I got into the LinkedIn video beta. I started creating daily videos. I made over 800 daily consecutive videos.
Daily?
um Daily, yeah. So for 2+ years I made videos. And as you know, Jason, as you're on the platform now, you post a lot, and not every post gets out there, right? Like,
No.
you can post every single day, but you can have like maybe half of your posts get seen if you're lucky. And that was certainly the case with me. Even though I made daily videos, not everybody saw every single video. So of the 800 videos, I have people who said like, wow, I love that you made 100 videos. And I was like, oh, I made a lot more than that. I made I made exponentially more than that, which is how you saw 100 videos, because
Yeah.
I was there and put in the commitment and the work. And it was fascinating because that truly changed my life. At least I started getting requests to do consulting. I started getting a lot, and I eventually moved to Los Angeles, but I moved back to Los Angeles. But I started getting all this interest in doing, work on the branding side. Then I got interest in me being an ambassador for different brands. I think the very first brand I was an ambassador for was WeWork, which is funny to think about in retrospect. And this was at the height of WeWork. But it was just it was a very interesting time that happened. And that was a few years after we had made our beautiful Cost of Capital show. And now, fast forward to now where we are. And now I solidly sit in owning my own agency. I kind of am in front of the camera, but behind the camera, but in a very different way than when we first met. And same for you, I think, a very different way of being in front of the camera and then behind the camera as
Yeah.
well. But that camera stuff helps, right?
It does, and, you know, I've talked about this I talk about this with my clients, but I've talked about this on my podcast a little bit, is there are people who have incredible things to say, they're just not great at saying it.
Yes.
But then there's people who are great at talking, but they have nothing to say. And that's what this medium kinda weeds out.
Yeah.
It's there's a lot of what I call salt and vinegar chip or Sour Patch Kids content out there. Like,
Okay.
it's like, "Ooh, this tastes good." It's like, "Ooh, yum, yum, yum," but there's 0 nourishment, and it actually makes you fat and could give you heart disease, right?
I don't know. You
But
just said salt and vinegar chips, but I quite like them. And also Sour
I love
Patch
them.
Kids.
That's the thing. I love them. I'll eat the whole
Yeah.
bag. If you
Yeah.
put a bag in front of me, I'll eat the whole bag, but guess
Yeah.
what that
Yeah.
does to me? It
Yeah.
it makes me not wanna move,
Yeah.
and it's
Yeah.
horrible, right?
You get that spike. Yeah.
But then the other thing is there's a lot of Brussels sprouts, raw Brussels sprouts out there
Yeah.
that it's I know I wanna watch this, but I just can't watch this person talk. So,
Right.
people like you
Thank
who
you.
are able to bridge that gap, not
Yeah.
just for yourself, where you
Right.
A, you have something to say, and B, you're a delight to watch and listen to.
Oh, thank you, Jason.
But
So are
but you
you.
uh, but you also are able to bring out the best in other people
Mm,
so that you can endow them with the ability to get a message across so people can actually hear it and
mhm.
not just feel like, "Ugh, let me find something that's, that tastes good, but it's not gonna do anything good for me."
I
Um,
do think of it as a word that I always come back to, and I'm sure, Jason, you'll resonate with this, is edutainment.
oh, I like that. I've never heard that
Yeah.
before.
Have you never heard of that before?
No,
There,
I've never heard it's probably
I've
been
given you
around for
an
like 25 years, but
yeah,
I've never
it's definitely it's definitely an older term, maybe not an older term. It definitely exists. So I didn't coin it. I don't want to take
Yeah.
credit for it. But it's education and entertainment. And that's, I think, exactly what you're talking about, which is the most watchable, especially I think because podcasts are long form. So I think you can get away with short form like TikTok or Instagram Reel or whatnot. You can get away with those being very much like a candy bite. They
Mhm.
just need to be good for 5 seconds and then you're done. But a podcast, people have to be willing to listen to you for an extended period of time. And if it's a
Mhm.
video podcast, they have to be willing to watch and listen to you for an extended period of time. And because so much of it is, at least on the podcast that I've been on, and Jason seems like with your podcast too, is very unscripted. So it's different than, listening to somebody who's doing a narration of a story.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, I just started doing the video. I had been doing the podcast without video for a long time, but I realized
Right.
some people enjoy video. So if
Yeah.
you watch this on YouTube, or if you watch it, you can also watch it on Spotify. But all
Oh,
the other
cool.
channels, it's just audio,
Yeah.
but the video's there if you want it. But yeah, Spotify has the video. You said something, I want to get back to it. You did 800 consecutive things. So let me ask you
Yeah.
this, because
Yeah.
this is educational for people. There's people who want to produce content and stuff
Right.
like that. How long per average was each of those episodes? Was it a 5 minute, 15 minute for average?
So this was when LinkedIn Video had a limit, a
Okay.
time limit. So each one was a no, actually, no, this was when I think this was when things were not optimized to be a minute. So I remember I did one video that was literally me walking around the Simpsons area of Universal Studio, and it was very unedited because at the time, I mean, when we worked on that show, Cost of Capital, that was done by professional editors
Yeah.
who were not me, right? And when I started doing my own videos, I was editing and making my own videos.
Yeah.
So a lot of my videos where I hit start, and then when it was done, I hit stop, and then I uploaded. That's all.
Okay.
So it was just
That's what I
raw.
wanted to ask you.
Right, it was a
Uh,
completely raw, unedited video, and they were very long, very meandery. I do think a lot of them ended up being 3 to 5 minutes, which eventually I learned how to edit, do at least simple edits, and now most of my videos are that kind of optimized 1 minute type of
mhm.
video, or they're at least edited. They're
Yeah.
at least
Yeah.
there's the beginning part of me hitting that start button, hitting the stop button, that's at least edited out. I think the barrier to entry for your listeners that are thinking about, can I do video? And I wouldn't wish 800 daily consecutive videos, especially done by one person. I wouldn't wish that on my worst enemy. But I will say it is absolutely possible to start with video. And we have so many ways to shoot video so inexpensively now and
Yeah.
so easily. Your mobile device can probably already do the kind of video that looks really good. And that would work on especially social media platforms that don't necessarily need that ultra high quality, high definition video.
Yeah. I'm using my phone right now. I just hooked my phone into my computer.
Oh my
And so
gosh, amazing.
I use my phone because it gives me the definition I want. I don't need a microphone that's good. I just happen to have this mic because my wife and I do voiceover work.
Yeah.
So I just happen to have this
See, I
microphone.
was gonna say, I was like, that looks like a voiceover mic to me.
It is. And I have a voiceover setup right there, but it
Right,
goes right into my computer. So you can do this with minimal stuff. The
right,
thing that I think most people don't understand though is that if you want to start producing this stuff, well, first of all, I do no edits. So when this goes live, or when I drop this, which will probably
right,
be in like 2 or 3 weeks,
right,
there'll be no edits
right,
because I want people. It's called making business personal. I want people to know who the person is. But what I have to do that takes a lot of time is create a post for LinkedIn, create a
right,
post for Instagram, create a post for YouTube because they're all different. So I
right,
got to create all that content. I've got to find the snapshots, and then I have to create the little YouTube shorts because that's what drives traffic to the YouTube
right,
channel.
right.
And so what I've found is if I have a YouTube short that's been seen like 1,500 times, that'll drive maybe 10 people to watch the full
Wow.
interview. It's
Yeah.
attention spans.
But it's attention spans, and this is why once again, when I made the 800 videos, people maybe saw 50 to 100 of them, if I'm lucky, right? And some people
Yeah.
were just like, I think I saw one out of 800 daily consecutive videos, and that's every social media feed though.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. And who
I
knows? Like,
who knows?
yeah. I get, I don't know, 5 emails a day minimum,
Yeah,
like that are blind emails that are obviously AI generated because they're all the
right,
same. But hey, your YouTube channel or hey, your Spotify, I can help you with this and I can guarantee you 500,000 people within blah, blah, blah. It's
right,
big business now. So
right,
you now own a company. that
Yeah.
helps people.
Yep.
What brought you to want to do that? Because you moved to LA, you want to be an actor.
Right.
In your own words, you produced and you said, "Oh, this resonates more with me. Like
Right.
this is something." So
Right.
what is it now? Because the little I know about you, you come across to me as someone who does a lot of introspection, a lot of soul work to
Thank
see
you.
is this
Yeah.
fulfilling? Why
Yeah.
am I doing this? Like you
Yeah.
come across that way to me.
Thank
So
you.
why are you doing what you do now? What does it do for you? Not for the people you help, but for you.
Right. I think that for me, I have a deep sense of purpose with the work that I'm doing now. It feels nice. It's a creative expression, which I think so many of us who were, are previously actors or maybe still part time actors, or you never quite leave that world. I think a lot of why I jumped into that was also feeling like the need for creative expression, why so many of us love to paint or do whatever we do, or garden or whatnot. I think for me right now, the work that I do, speaking on stages, talking about personal branding. I just picked up a couple new mentors, college students. A lot of that feels really good because I'm helping folks figure out what they want to do next. And especially when you're talking to the younger people, they especially are just like, what do I do next? Because a lot of that scaffolding that you and I used growing up to get started in our careers doesn't exist anymore. And
Yeah.
so they're figuring this out, but they also have the internet in a very specific way that I also, didn't have in, say, even college, right? So they're trying to figure out these new ways of building their worlds. All that being said, I think that I find a deep purpose in helping others figure out what their story is and helping to amplify that particular story. I think that everyone has amazing stories inside of them, interesting stories, small stories, big stories, and a lot of it is pulling out what those stories are and then sharing them in a really compelling way. And that's what I believe is fundamentally personal branding. I think people think of personal branding as a super dry thing, or it's this thing that's like, here's the 10 steps. They're exactly like this. Then you will have
Yeah.
like exactly the right personal brand. And the whole thing about personal branding is incredibly personal. I mean, look at the title of this podcast that we are on right now, Jason, that you titled. It's all about making it personal. And I think that personal aspect of building a personal brand is what resonates with people. People like hearing the mistakes. People like hearing some of the ums and the ahs and the I'm not sure, and let me take a moment to think about that. Those things I think are actually a lot more attractive and interesting to other humans than necessarily perfectly produced. Also, because then it starts to really feel like an AI vehicle.
Yeah. Yeah. Let me ask you this. Okay, so you may or may not know this, but one of my big things is I tell people all the time, you are not a brand. I
Mm,
tell people all the time, you're not a brand.
mhm.
Coca-Cola is a brand. Nike's
Yeah.
a brand.
Yeah.
You are a dynamic person who is different today than you were yesterday. So tell me, from your point of view,
Right.
what is personal branding? Give me an example of don't name names, but some of your clients, like what do they do? Who are they? What are they trying to achieve that brand can help them achieve it?
Absolutely. So I'll give an example without naming names of one of my clients. I work with a lot of C-level executives, I would say, and high-level directors on their personal brands. And one of them, very important person, works in luxury real estate, a big, big deal. And with their personal brand, they are like their own company. And why? Because they represent the massive company that they are the literal CEO of, right? Or
Mhm.
C level executive, I should say that. But for them, it's so important that they come across in a very specific way, a very consistent way. And so to me, that personal branding is about that consistency. It's about that commitment to being a certain set of keywords, I will say, about your personal brand. So everyone knows that that particular person, they are a leader in, say, luxury real estate. So
Okay.
everyone knows to follow them and follow their journey because they're known for very specific and niche down things. I think a good personal brand allows you to niche down and allows you to be known for a hyper specific thing. The number one question I always get is like, what's personal brand versus reputation then? And I always like to think that reputation is what other people say about you when you're not in the room.
Mhm.
And then your personal brand is that story that you tell yourself. And I don't think I know maybe it's silly because I have literally a book called Personal Branding for Introverts coming out. But I don't think that you saying that you're not a brand, you're this entirely separate entity, you're being, I actually don't think that's wrong either. I think that's good because it helps people maybe think about it a little bit differently. Because at the end of the day, they're just words. Like I would say my biggest pet peeve of working when I worked in corporate America was everyone wanted to have things be called all these acronyms and all these things. And there's a million of them. And so many of them were just built to make built to make them feel like the smartest person in the room
Oh,
and to
yeah.
lend that credence to them that they are the smartest person in the room. And so many of those terms don't necessarily the terms themselves don't matter. What matters is the subject of those terms, right?
I love where you're going with this, and I think you've really hit on something because, there's this theory that you can't think of anything that you don't have a word for, right?
Right.
Like, if you don't have a word for it, you can't think of it. I don't know if that's true. That might be a box that we believe, who knows? And I'm not gonna
Right.
spend any of my precious time trying to figure that out, right?
Right.
But
Right.
personal brand
Right.
has an immediate impact on people when they hear it, right?
Right.
Some people think, that motivational speaker who's jumping up and down and getting everybody in the audience to
Right.
baa like sheep and all that stuff like that.
Right.
Some people think, oh, well, that means I always wear the exact same thing everywhere
Right.
I go.
Right.
But what you're saying is, no, there's just not a better term I can use. Like that's the
Yes.
term, but the way that you go about it is really to help people find consistency in who they are, which a lot of people would call authenticity.
Right.
Um, to have a value system
Right.
and to stand for something.
Right.
So to be, a good person essentially. Um,
I mean, and I think people define a good person very differently,
yeah.
but I do think you're exactly right. Having values and then tying a consistency to that value, which a lot of people also say, well, I don't need that when I'm selling cars, right? I don't need a
Mm,
personal brand when I'm selling cars. But I would argue that you absolutely do need that. And not only do you need that, it's just very helpful because you can sell if you don't have that personal brand, then you might as well be that AI bot that, and you and I, I'm sure, get probably over the course of the week. I don't even look at my spam box anymore sometimes, but I go in there and it's all AI pitches
oh yeah.
and, and some of them make it into my regular inbox and I look at it and you can just tell right away when
Yeah.
they're an AI pitch. They're too long. They use keywords that I use on my website, but in a weird way. It's just
Hmm.
written in an odd way. Or they reference something that happened in an article, but then for some reason the rest of it is paraphrasing that article or something. But I think so much of that we look at and we go, oh, I don't really like this. Versus when I get pitches from people that are a couple sentences long and I can just tell they're human, I will take more time and look at that. In fact, I will say I'm going to probably next week hire someone who sent me a cold pitch for their business
Really?
that was 2 sentences long, never heard of them in my entire life, didn't know they existed before when they sent me that pitch. They sent me the pitch and I said, tell me more. I just replied with literally just tell me more, those few words. And they got back to me and they said, here's very short case studies. And they named some names. Some of them are, I would say, massive New York Times bestsellers, right? So people that I'm like, did you work with these? Or is this a scam? Which I'm sure once again, we've all been there, right?
Yeah.
And it's funny because I messaged that New York Times bestseller who I don't know, and I just asked, did you work with this person? And I'm not necessarily expecting a response back. Or expecting their team to get back to me. And he personally replied And this is somebody who has an exponentially larger following than me by several exponents. And he said, yes, we work with them and they did a great job. That's all and I just was like, oh, wow, thank you so much for replying. Thank you so much. But all of that from one person sending me 2 lines, but just being an actual human being sending me that line. And I can just tell from just the email and the way he responds that his personal brand is he's a human. He's really down to earth. He's really friendly. The work that he does is verifiable. That's why he doesn't need bells and whistles around it, because he literally works with these incredibly famous people to do the job that he's doing. And he doesn't need to prove himself to me, and he will get my work or he will not get my work. He's already working with so many other great people, and I will probably hire him because he sent me a cold email, Jason, that was basically 2 lines long, but was not at all AI generated.
Well, it's interesting because now I mean, I don't want to set a precedent here or anything, but
Right, right.
now bad grammar and misspelled words stand out
Well, I keep
because,
seeing those posts for like the death of the M dash, right?
yeah,
Because
the
the
M
M
dash, yeah,
dash, the poor M dash, which I
the poor
use
M
because
dash.
I write,
So
and I'm sure
I,
you've used it too,
no, I don't, because I don't know how to do it. I don't know the shortcut key. I always would just put 2 regular dashes because I don't know
Fair,
the
fair,
shortcut key. So I
fair.
never use an M dash, even though I
Oh,
love the M
wow.
dash. So if you ever see an M dash with me, it's because I copied and pasted it from something else
From something
that
else,
I
yeah,
wrote because I don't know
yeah.
how to do it. I don't know how to do the M dash. I'm
But that,
inept when it comes to that stuff.
the poor vilified, the
Yeah, and the
true victim,
semicolon. Yeah.
the semicolon. But
Um,
yeah, the M dash, truly
well,
a sad
first of all, and I
tragedy.
didn't even know what it was called, but you wrote this book,
Yes.
and how long had you been thinking about writing a book? And I don't mean this book.
Right.
So over the course of your life, and you're what, like 23, 24 years old? So over the course of that
18
very
years old, no,
young,
kidding.
yeah, I mean,
Um,
you're a child prodigy, graduated Harvard at 11.
right.
Um, how long had you contemplated, hey, I want to write a book, but then you'd go back and forth between, well, what should it be about? And do I have the time? Or did you just say, I'm going to write a book and you wrote one?
I would love if the process was I want to write a book and then a major publisher picked me up 2 weeks later. And I
Wouldn't
mean,
that be
I would
nice?
love it. Wouldn't that be nice? And that
Yeah.
was, as you know, it wasn't the case. And so once again, for all the listeners out there who are thinking about writing your own books, I want to say that there's so many different ways you could do it. And I'll go into a little bit of that right after I tell my story. But for me, I had been thinking about it for so many years, probably a decade. I've been thinking about writing a book on personal branding, weirdly. And when it got kind of closer to the point where I thought maybe I could write a book because I had developed somewhat of an audience. I think at the time I really started thinking about it, I had 3,000 followers on LinkedIn and I'm like, I'm famous. 3,000. Do you know what I mean? And now I have over 100,000. But I will say this, at the time, that 3,000 was just like such a massive,
Yeah.
unbelievable number to have. And so also anyone listening who has 3,000 or close to 3,000, brava, like you are there. You were at the number when I thought like, I can accomplish anything.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, so oh gosh, like, so right around that time, I thought, okay, I really want to write a book. So I started developing personal branding specifically for introverts because there's all the books out there for introverts are all about, you need to be quiet, you need to not talk, you need to be this, that, the other thing. And so few books also address literally the internet at, and how to use the internet as an introvert. So I really wanted to make a book that talk to introverts in this modern age that has the internet and that also talks about how introverts don't need to be quiet all the time, nor do you need to fake being extroverts, which is my other pet peeve of an introvert book, which is just like, here's 20 ways to become an extrovert overnight, which if you're an introvert, you don't need to become anything. You can just become who you are, which is an introvert and a really good one. So, I will say that this book process took me so many years, to get to, and very thankful that it's out through a major publisher. So it's under an imprint under Hachette, which is one of the big 5 publishers. But I will say this too, my book had 2 homes. The original home was McGraw-Hill Business, which folded, completely folded. So it was literally my book was about to come out, and I got an email that was just like, "By the way, we just don't exist." And so
So
I'm
who
like,
sent the email?
"Oh my god," exactly. They're like, "We're working for another week."
Wow.
And then it's gone, and very generously they gave me back the rights to my book. So I'm very thankful actually to McGraw-Hill for doing that, because that was a very generous thing. They didn't need to do it, but they did it. So I was able to find another home at Hachette. But this happens also a lot with, I think, traditional publishing. A lot of things happen and it's very slow.
Mhm.
Which is why when I see my friends do self-publishing, I'm a little jealous because it's so fast. Like you
Well, it's
literally
fast, but
can do that, you
they're
know?
also doing all of the work.
You are doing all of the work. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, so, my dad has published over 60 books.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And McGraw-Hill published a few of them as well. And
Okay, great.
over 60 books. And so
Wow.
I've always felt this pressure that I need to write a book.
Right.
And my clients are all like, when are you writing your book? And so for, I don't know, if, years and years and years ago, I
Yeah.
was going to write an acting book.
Right. What makes
And
sense when you're
then when
acting.
yeah. And then when I started consulting, there were a number of things. First, I was going to write a book about this, then a book about that, then a book about this, then a book about that. And I was finally like, why am I doing this until and then every week I come up with another thing to write about.
Yeah.
And my wife pointed out to me the other day, she's like, Jason, you've got um, almost 50 episodes of your podcast. You've got like 8 books there already.
Yeah.
And so I listened to all of my podcasts and I reread all of my newsletters and I said, oh my gosh, I do have a book. And so
Yeah.
now it's about what is it, you
Right.
know? But like, and talk people through it, there's a lot of ways to get a book out there.
Right.
Now, you went the traditional publishing route. So how did
Right.
you meet the folks at McGraw-Hill? Because it was with McGraw-Hill.
Right.
How did you learn how to write an outline and do sample chapters and do pitches? How'd you learn that?
Yeah. So I think there's a lot of fog and mist, and we're getting into Halloween season, but there's a lot of confusion surrounding especially the nonfiction business book world. I remember asking for advice around this, and everyone who had published, a best-selling nonfiction book, everyone has such there. No one talks about it. No one likes to talk about it unless they're selling you a service to literally help you sell a book,
Mhm.
which I'm not interested in doing that. So everything I will tell you is I hope that it's helpful. So if you're thinking about doing a nonfiction, specifically business book, it is a lot about, I hate to say this comes back to personal brand. It is so helpful if you have a personal brand, but you can still write that book even if you don't have a personal brand, but you have a really strong perspective and you have a deep expertise in a hyper specific area. So, for example, you could be writing that book on Facebook ads, right? Or meta ads, I guess I should say. You could be writing that book on being a product manager in the beauty industry. It's really about having that very hyper specific expertise, and then you don't necessarily need the you side of it at all. But I will say with traditional publishers, they won't admit to this publicly, but they like it if you also have a social following. So whether that's you have a podcast, you have a Substack, right? You have a newsletter, you have for me, it was a social following on LinkedIn. You have one of those things. And it doesn't need to be in the millions, but it's helpful to have something. And
Yeah.
that just shows them that not to be this, but you can sell the book at the end of the day. You will have some interest in a book that you develop, and traditional publishers are now looking for that. But say how I got connected to McGraw-Hill is I had an agent reach out to me who was very interested in if I had a book in me that I wanted to write, and I said yes. I do have a book. So it was good timing, I think, on their part, because I'd just been thinking, I do have a book, I do have this hyper specific book, and they said, well, let's just try taking it around and see if there's interest, and there was. immediate interest. And by immediate, I mean it took several months. And like it's
Yeah.
I think immediate in traditional publishing is not immediate. In self-publishing, where immediate is like your book is out tomorrow, right?
Yeah.
In self-publishing and traditional publishing, it's like you did it in under a year. Which is what happened with me. And we did it in, I think under a year, maybe a year and a half.
That's
We
fast.
got that interest, which I think is incredibly fast. And I met with so many other publishers who were interested or maybe not interested. I think I did meet with somebody who never made an offer on my book. I met with a couple folks who were like, we like you, but we're not sure that this book is the right book. So come back to us when you have another book. So that also happens, right?
Mm.
Or a lot of times what the publisher is doing is they're investing, once again, not to bring it back to personal branding, they're investing in you. So if they like you as a person and they like your perspective, they like your ideas, they will sometimes traditional publishers will green light that book. They'll say okay to your book because they also think this person might have some other interesting books in them, right?
Yeah.
And so that's, I think, anytime you're a first time author, they're taking a chance on you, they're making a bet. And so whatever you can bring to the table that's strong. And for some people, that's also like, hey, I'm part of 5 different organizations. So maybe you don't even have an online presence or a podcast or a newsletter or anything, but you're like, I'm part of so many
Yeah.
organizations. And
Well,
that's
think
still
about it.
being connected to people.
We're so stuck in the moment,
Yeah.
when Dale Carnegie wrote his book, there was no social media presence, like
There was no,
people,
and I think all of
you
us,
know,
maybe not everyone, but I've certainly read it. And like all the business people I know have read that book. So
yeah. Well, almost every book is just a version of Dale Carnegie's book. It's timeless. But
it's so timeless. Yeah.
there's something that you just said. Gosh, I'm at that age now that if I don't write something down immediately, it's gone forever until it's like a week from now, and I'm gonna think, oh,
You're
Goldie,
gonna
now I
remember it.
remember. But
I know on your next podcast episode, because you shoot so many of these, you're gonna remember it on the next podcast episode.
it
You're gonna
happens.
reference this one.
I
Yeah.
do. I bring up things that
Yeah.
happened earlier.
Yeah.
Also, but my biggest fear though is that I'm gonna have like grandpa brain, and I'm gonna say the same thing on every podcast, and I'll think I'm saying it for the first time. It's like my, grandpa who
Yeah.
tells the
Yeah.
story like 80 times. But
It's good to have
it'll
repetition.
it'll come to me. It'll come to me before we're done.
Yeah.
But let me
Yeah.
ask you this: so, a lot of my clients are engineers, they're analysts. Same with you. I'm working in the C-suite. I'm working with senior directors, things like that,
Yeah.
EVPs, and a lot of them are analysts.
Mm.
They're engineers.
Yeah.
They are in cybersecurity. They're in big data. They're in fintech, and
Right.
many of them are self-described introverts.
Right.
And a lot of them listen to this podcast.
Great.
So
Buy my book.
exactly. So don't worry, the link's going to be in the description. Okay. So
yeah, exactly.
I want a signed copy, by the way. You're my second author, and I got a signed
Absolutely,
copy from
Jason.
Judy. Yeah, I got a
I'm
signed
gonna
copy from Judy.
definitely, please. I'm so happy to sign a copy to you.
But obviously it's for introverts.
Yeah.
But what are they going to get out of this book? How is it going to elevate them? And what are extroverts going to get out of your book?
Okay. Thank you for asking that. I'm going to start with the second question first, because I think that's a shorter and easier answer. So it's funny because when I had to do interviews for this book, I had to do the most awkward thing. I went around to a handful of folks and I just said, are you an introvert or extrovert? And I didn't realize this was a contentious question, because some people would get back to me and be like really upset. They're like, Goldie, how do you not know that I'm an extrovert? Or how do you not know that I'm an introvert?
Because I've never heard you talk.
And I'm just like, I didn't realize, and some people surprise me. They're like, I know you think I'm an introvert, but I'm an extrovert. And I'm just like, oh, okay. Like, I'm sorry, it's like me saying like, I thought your favorite color is blue. And they're like, absolutely not. It's been red this whole time. And I just thought this was such a neutral question to ask. But I will say that what extroverts will get out of it is I have an entire section on how introverts can partner with extroverts, with quotes, with case studies from extroverts who have worked in leadership roles, have partnered with extroverts. I think it's very helpful. I actually gave a talk. I gave a very early version of this book as a talk during a large conference. And I remember the majority of people who attended were extroverts who were listening to me give this talk on introverts, because a lot of them wanted to know how to better work with introverts. So one entire chapter is dedicated just to extroverts and how they can better partner and help introverts, but also why introverts are invaluable to extroverts, right? Introverts are such deep thinkers.
Hmm.
Introverts are able to process and analyze really thoughtfully. Once again, you just said you have analysts who are your clients, and that doesn't surprise me at all, Jason. But they can partner with extroverts specifically at work because extroverts will be the one that will go into the room and say, listen, Jason did a great job on this. Jason like absolutely killed it on his report. Make sure that you include Jason in on this. That's what an extrovert can do in the room. And for an extrovert, an introvert can go in and be like, not to use your name for both these sides of the example, but an introvert can go in and have a, let's be honest, a written thing or send an email that says, Jason was incredibly helpful on this project. He really brought together all these different teams. He was able to liaison really effectively between everyone. And he just has been outspoken advocate for blah, 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 blah. So this is how introverts and extroverts can not just coexist, but really help each other, especially at work. I think
Mm.
that's so powerful. So that was the first question.
Yeah, and let's go further on that
Yeah,
because
please.
there's when Grace was pregnant with Everly,
Yeah.
she got these phenomenal books about raising children and being a mother and stuff like that. And she found
Mhm.
these really great books, not the ones that you would normally know, right?
Right.
Things that were uh how to raise a child. I'm going to get all the words wrong, but it was saying
Right.
like how to raise a child like a French child or something, because like in France,
Right.
your child sits at the dinner table a lot earlier, eats the
Right.
food you're eating, things like that. She learned all these things, stuff that are old wives tales, things like that. But what I found interesting was me reading the books on how a mom can be a better mom. There's
Right.
nothing in there that's directed towards fathers. There's nothing in there that's directed towards men, but it
Right.
gave me a cursory knowledge and understanding of things I never would have thought of.
Right.
And so that's
Right.
the same with your book. If someone walks into a room and they fill that room, they most likely have no idea what it feels like to be someone who feels like they're not even noticed in that room.
Right.
And so imagine what's possible for those extroverts, not just in business, but also in a family. Because sometimes that one person in the family, they're like, gosh, everybody always agrees with me because they're afraid. you know? Um,
Yes, because they're afraid to voice that opinion. They're afraid to
yeah.
say something. Yeah, no, and obviously this book is, geared towards career, but obviously part of it is geared towards life and lessening a lot of the anxiety that I'm an introvert that has massive anxiety and I don't think most people know that, but when I go on stage, it's one of those places where I actually have less anxiety weirdly, but that could be the performer part of it. But I feel like so many other introverts I meet also have a very similar kind of anxiety. They think like, gosh, I have to make a phone call today, and I hate those cold phone calls. And I've been doing a
Mhm.
lot of cold outreach, actually, ironically, for this book about introverts. I said the most difficult thing is to be an introvert selling a book about introverts to introverts. And that is absolutely true. And what's funny is I've said this at parties, and this is not to elicit necessarily pity or anything. And I remember I had an introvert I was talking to. He whipped out his phone. He bought my book immediately off Amazon. He's like, "There, you got another book sale." And I was just like, "Oh my gosh, thank you so much!" Like I wasn't even saying that, so you'd buy my book, but they. But it's
How
it's
does your
funny.
how does your anxiety manifest? What does anxiety feel like to you?
Yeah, so for me, it's a very physical anxiety. I get the sweaty palms. I get if I have a panic attack, which I've had before, then that's just a complete shutdown of my literal person. I actually did a keynote once, and I'm not going to say where, but it was in a different country outside the U.S. And I actually had a panic attack on stage, and I couldn't feel my hands. I couldn't feel. I don't even know what I said because I look back and I'm like, oh great, I went on autopilot and I still did a good talk, but I couldn't even feel or hear myself. That's how bad my anxiety can sometimes get. And I certainly feel that when LA is such a funny place, right? It's like full of such cool people. So I think my anxiety honestly is the worst when I go to one of the cool young people parties, right? Where it's like, it's a place full of like, you go to a full of beautiful people party are like my greatest fear in life. When I have to go to those and I have to walk around and make the small talk about what is cool in LA, which I don't know what's cool in LA. So I don't know how you make that small talk. That is honestly my greatest fear. I would rather speak to 5,000 strangers on stage about literally almost any subject than
Yeah.
go to a cool party in LA full of 10 very cool, well-dressed people.
Well, you know what's interesting
Yeah.
about that is when
Yeah.
you're really young
Yeah.
and you get to one of those parties, you
Yeah.
think, oh my gosh, I'm not cool enough. Like I'm not there yet. But then you get to an age where it's like, oh, they're so much younger than I. When were you ever at the level? When were you ever
Right.
one of the cool ones?
Right.
But I find the secret is this. It's
Yeah.
that most people want you to think that they're interesting.
Yes.
Most people. So when you're with someone, you're like, oh, this person's so much cooler than I am. They want you to think they're cool. They're worried that you don't like them.
I know. This is the whole like who's watching me while I walk down the street
Yep.
phenomenon, right?
Yep.
Like we always think like, oh, if I do this stupid thing, there's so many people watching me on the street doing this stupid thing. While most of the time those people are literally just watching themselves to see if they're doing a stupid thing and if other people are watching them do the thing. um I think it's really funny that we worry. You're right. We worry so much about what other people think
Yeah.
when most people are, especially in Los Angeles. Let's be real.
Well, come
Especially
on.
in
There's
Los
one
Angeles.
reason to move to LA. There's
Yeah.
one reason. If you wanted the weather, you'd move to San Diego.
Yeah.
It's better weather.
Yeah. So it's like, a lot of people in LA really care about themselves. I
Yeah.
think it's a nice way to say it.
It's a
But
very nice way to say it.
it's a very nice way to say it. But LA is truly full of some of the most interesting, creative,
Yeah.
attractive, like cool, like folks that you will ever meet in one city. And it's a funny place to build your personal brand also because just like I think in a lot of other places, like New York is a great place to think about this. People build their brands in a very specific way. So I'm sure Jason, you run into this too, because I know I run into this when I express to people like, oh, I have a presence on LinkedIn, I work with business people and I do more professional marketing stuff. They're like, oh, you're not a lifestyle influencer. You're not like, right. You're not like, for you, I guess, Jason, that would be more the appropriate funnel would be like a family influencer, right? Like you're like creating content around your family and that's how you make the majority of your income. And I think it's really funny to like run into folks that of course they do that. They do it really well. That's how they make their money. It's very cool. But they just kind of assume because LA is such an influencer, beauty, fashion,
Yeah.
lifestyle town that if you're making your money by being present online, that's how you're doing it. I think that's just really
Well,
interesting.
I'm going to say something pretty
Yeah.
controversial right now.
Yeah.
Before the influencer thing was a thing,
Yes.
right? Before anybody with a camera and a high-speed internet connection could have an opinion that they were forcing on other people,
Right.
LA might still be, but let's just say it is.
Yeah.
The most talented people in the world live in Los Angeles.
Yeah.
The most talented people in the world come to LA because
Yeah.
this is where that talent can create a life for them. So whether
Right.
they're
Right.
writers, performers, directors, producers, musicians, dancers, you name it.
Right.
This is where you can monetize that, either here or Bollywood. But if you don't
Right.
speak, if you're not speaking an Indian language, Bollywood's not going to really help you,
Right.
right?
Right.
But this is the mecca of entertainment,
Right.
even though most things aren't shot here, but it is. But here's what I've noticed has happened over the
Yes.
past 10 years.
Right.
This home of the most talented people in the world has attracted people with zero talent. And what they've done is they've created a commentary opinion that has garnered them like look at Jake Paul.
Right.
Now, the guy can take a punch. He's fought things.
Yeah.
But this guy has made hundreds of millions of dollars having an opinion on people that have talent.
Right.
And so that's what this has become in a lot of ways. And I'm not trashing that because what he did to develop what he's developed took a tremendous amount of work. and a tremendous
Right.
amount of effort.
And it's a very smart business decision on his
Yeah.
part, right? That he created his own lane and that he's stuck really hard in it. I do think from a decade ago, or let's be more accurate, 2 decades ago probably is a better example. Um, I think that that's really fascinating. If you think 2 decades ago, that that commentary, that person then would exist, how they would probably exist in LA would be they would be a host of a show,
Mhm,
right?
mhm,
Or they would be like doing the after show or some version of that. And now with the internet and things being so accessible, and I agree that LA has a lot more folks who they are popular and existing because of their physical beauty, which once again,
mhm.
that would have been funneled. I will say this, that before that would have been funneled into like they're the star of a show.
Yeah.
So, and now that's not funneled
But
necessarily
but
there.
but the thing was, though,
Yeah.
even when someone was absolutely gorgeous,
Right.
you still had to be able to perform.
You still, yeah.
You'd get a shot, and if you couldn't perform, you get a second shot. But then the third one, if you couldn't perform or if you were a
Right.
jerk, right,
Right. Or you jerk. Yeah.
you're done. But now
Now
you
the
can keep on going.
jerkification
The
of,
jerkification,
um,
jerk-attainment, jerk-attainment. There
jerk.
we go.
Yeah, I think it's like it's definitely it's an entirely new universe of what people consume, and because anytime you tie money to something, right? That's when
Mhm,
people flock to it. And I agree that now you have folks that are creating their brands around outrage, around like being, jerks or doing pranks or doing this other stuff. And all that being said, I do think it's funny because I think that when you are then thinking about a brand in like the more, I don't even want to say conservative space, but in the space that we're in, that it's not necessarily as showy, that's probably a better way of saying it, that it's helpful to stay away from that kind of content.
yeah,
And it's helpful to stay and remain in the space where what you're offering is intelligence. What you're offering is skills. What you're offering is your knowledge that you have because you have worked in the industry that you've worked in, or you've just done the job that you've done for so long, or with so many people, or you have so many case studies and stuff. I I think that that then attracts the kind of opportunities that are more stable too, quite frankly.
yeah. Well,
Yeah.
it's a trap, and this
Yeah.
is what I mean. We from my observations, we are, as a society in
Mhm.
Western culture, in a right now immediacy focus. It's just right now.
Yeah.
I'm gonna put something out there. How many people click on it within 24 hours? I'm gonna put something out there because I need to
Right.
create a presence, right?
Right.
But let's look at how many people today who would be great leaders.
Right.
They really would be a great politician or a great representative. They might
Right.
be a great talk show host. They
Right.
might be a great reporter. But
Right.
10 years ago, they said something online or they tweeted something and someone
Right.
digs it up, and now that person will never get that job. Now,
Right.
I don't think that's right. People change and they grow, but that's the cautionary tale with people today. You got to realize whatever you say right now that you think, oh, this is going to get me famous. Yeah. And it might also make you infamous.
Yeah, and infamous is where, and some people love to lean into the infamous, and that works really well for some folks. When I work with clients though, especially I think when I work with clients, especially in the C-suite, we want to stay away from infamous unless they've already been living in that infamous space, in which case, once you're kind of there, it's hard to leave that
Yeah.
space. Um, and I think about I've met a couple folks who are reality show stars. This just happens in Los Angeles.
Hmm.
Um, and and it's fascinating to me because their whole brand is built on being infamous. And it's also not necessarily even built on who they are as a person, but it's built on that they appeared on this incredibly popular reality show, and that they said this one soundbite that the producers picked up, and that's the soundbite that they're forever known for.
Hmm.
And they will have been on that show for like say a month or shot that show for 2 months, but it's really that those four words define what they can do moving forward. So definitely, I think it's helpful to be really careful. And I don't know about you, Jason. I've definitely been asked to be on reality shows, and I've turned down a couple of them
I've been asked to be on
because
quite a few, and I've had to
yeah, and
turn
I
all
was
of them
gonna
down.
say it doesn't surprise me. I've I've turned basically the majority of them I've turned down. I shouldn't even say majority. I'm not on any of them. I've turned them all essentially at this point. I've turned them all down, at least the ones that wanted me, because I know that it all ends up in the editing room.
Yep.
And so you can be the kindest, most thoughtful, most eloquent person, but they can Frankenstein cut you together to
Mhm.
sound not like that. And because that's better television, which I understand because I watch some of that reality television, it just makes for better TV. And when you have to be really careful sometimes about it. One of my friends, she had 0 followers, I would say maybe 100 followers on each platform, right? And then was on a reality show that was on Netflix. So, and it did really well. The reality show did really well. She was in the majority of the show. So they gave her a cut that she was in the majority of it because they liked her so much, and they gave her the best cut of the entire show. So she got a
Mm.
super favorable, positive cut. They cut only good things of her saying good things. And this is like the best case scenario. And from it, she's been able to book other things, and she's gone on to kind of build her good gal persona, and do a lot more. But that is rare.
Yeah.
And that is, she got very lucky that she got the good person cut. And she is very lucky that they liked her as a person. And that's the other thing I will say is they
That's
actually
what I was gonna
did
say.
like her as a person because she was kind to them off camera. And I will
Mhm.
say that people don't think about that. She was kind to them off camera, and they gave her a more favorable cut because they thought she was just like a darling, and they really enjoyed her as a person, and they saw how she was also in moments to other people on this reality show, how she was with them when she wasn't on camera, and it was a very specific, way that was a good way because she's a kind, thoughtful person, and they decided in the editing room that they liked her, and they gave
Yeah.
her a long and good cut. And usually you don't get these, right? You get a short and good cut, or you get a long and you get a very villainous cut.
Mhm. So you just reminded me of the thing that I forgot because
Yeah,
you said what you said again, which
yeah,
is, we were talking about how people are so concerned with what other people think about them and stuff like
right,
that. But here's where it does matter. What you mentioned earlier was while you're trying to get your book published,
right.
they liked you,
Yeah.
and that matters. Listen, we live in a world with over 8 billion people.
So wild.
Your skills and your talents are 100% replaceable,
Yeah,
but you're not. And
you are
so
not.
being liked is so important.
Yeah,
It's so important because I can choose who I want to spend my time with. I can
right,
choose who I want to hire. And you're damn right. I'm going to hire the person, if I'm going to be working with this person, that I like being around.
right.
But I think where a lot of people get this wrong, and help me out with this because you know a lot about branding.
Yeah,
Where most people get this wrong is they think, oh, great. So then I have to put on a show so that
right,
people like me. But that's not
right.
true, is it?
No, no, I think that people are, to me, this has nothing to do with career or anything. I think that people are the most likable when they share a real piece of themselves, when they show you a real side, because humans at the end of the day are animals. And I think that we respond really well when we see the other animal without the mask on, when we see an unpolished version of the other person. And that, of course, may not resonate for other reasons, but I think that we are naturally, as humans, attracted. And I don't mean that in the romantic way. I mean that as just like we want to work with those people. We want to be friends with those people. We want to give opportunities to those people.
Mhm.
We feel that way about people that we see who are very human still, who are very relatable, who are who are just very interesting. I remember I went to this very funny, like very secret, very private dinner at South by Southwest one year. And it was wild because it was full of these, some people were just like, I'm a school teacher in Ohio, right? And some people were, I'm like the political manager for the current president. Like I'm their current like PR crisis manager. And it was fascinating to like meet all these people. And the people who were the most interesting in the room were not always necessarily the people who had the biggest titles, the coolest titles, right?
Yeah.
They're the people who are just like, here's this thing that I'm incredibly passionate about and I really care about, and this is why I care about it. And my like community of 130 people that I live near because I live in a small town, they all care about it. We're all like, we're literally doing this event where we're all getting together at like our one meeting place and we're hosting a party for this hyper specific book that I'm writing that makes sense in our community. And I thought those people were the most interesting people in the room. And and it worked because people wanted to talk to those people. Now, of course, there were people that wanted to talk to the most powerful people in the room. That just is what happens. But I think outside of those most powerful people, the next set of people were not like the mid-tier people. It was the people who had a compelling story, who were just
Mhm.
interesting, who are also interested in what they're telling you. Because you also like the worst thing is to be around people who are bored or dislike what they're sharing with you. Because if you're not even interested in what you're sharing, why should I be interested?
Well, I mean, this goes right into, I think, the point of your book. Yeah, the people who had stories, but you need to be willing to share your story.
Right.
And you need to invest in your story. I've always told people the way to be interesting is to show interest in other people.
Right. Right.
If
And
you
I'll
show
shorten that
interest,
down for you. The way to be interesting is to be interested.
there you go. Look at that.
Yeah.
I have an editor now. Now I have an editor.
Now you
So
have an
listen,
editor.
I would be remiss. We got to come to the end. I want to be mindful of your
Yeah.
time, but I would be remiss if I didn't bring this up because I read this in your bio.
Yeah. Please.
You write for the Archie comic?
Yes. I write for
What?
Archie Comics.
First of all, and I wasn't joking when I said you're 23, 24. Like, you don't look a day older than when I met you,
Thank
and it
you.
pisses me
Thank
off
you.
because look at
Thank you,
all my
Jason.
gray hair.
No,
Um,
no,
but
Jason, you're very distinguished back then, and
my
you're continue
distinguished,
to
yeah.
be distinguished now.
It's very politic of you, very politic. But uh, A, how do you even know what the Archie comic is because you're so young? But two, how do you get that gig? How do you start writing for the Archie comic?
Okay, so first of all, I will say this. I've read Archie probably since I was like 6 or 7 years old. I've read Archie my entire life. And I used to go and whenever I'd see them in, a used bookstore, they'd have them and they still do this, right? Have them in the bins, right? Those
Mhm.
bins of like, here's the dollar store thing. I would scrounge for those digests. I would like, or their single issues. And I would collect them, not because I wanted to collect them to sell or they're worth something, but because I loved Archie comics so, so much. And it's funny the journey that life takes you on. So part of my journey is I eventually, in my career wrote for Forbes. And at one point I was a senior contributor at Forbes. And I was always looking for interesting stories, interesting people, interesting brands to cover. And I am such a fangirl, quite frankly, over Archie. And it was one of those brands that I covered as just like being such an enduring American institution. I think they thought it was funny too, because I was just like, they started explaining things and I was like, oh, I already know that. Like they're trying to explain to me characters. And I was like, no, I know that. I like have that issue where Archie initially chose between Betty and Veronica and then they got married and there was a split issue. The cover looked like this and they were like, oh, go, you like actually know, and I'm not faking it, right? I genuinely am such a hyper super fan of Archie. And I just ended up talking with the president of Archie, who's now my friend, which is like such a funny thing to say too. And we're just talking, and I just said, I'm not a forceful person. So I just said, at some point in my life, my dream is to write an Archie comic. Like I would like to at some point write an Archie comic. And this is when people say yes or no to you, right?
Mhm.
So when you do that ask and people say yes or no. And if he had said no, that's 90% of what I was expecting. And he said, oh, why don't you pitch me something? So this is when luck meets preparation, right?
Mhm.
Which is always important. And I remember that I already knew the story. Like I heard when he said that, I think he thought I was going to go back to him and be like, I have a couple stories. I was like, no, this is exactly the story. And this is the very first Archie comic I ever wrote, and he just gave me a theme. He said it has to be over the Halloween. So I was like, great, not a problem. The story is all of their little stories. So it's the story of Archie and their gang. They go to Pop's diner and it's them reminiscing about all the Halloweens they've had in the past and like how much Jughead loves burgers, right? Veronica's showing off her gold card. um Betty had like a very romantic moment where she and Archie, also Team Betty, where she and Archie like had such a beautiful moment together. And it all ends with them, the Archies saving the day as a band and like having a performance. And they're all dressed in little costumes. It has a ton of puns in it because I love puns, because I have been reading Archie comics for a very long time and I know they love puns. So like a million dad jokes are in there and a million puns, and it's like a story that I've been wanting to write about Archie probably for over a decade. And I just thought, like, if I ever get a chance to write an Archie comic, this is the story I'd write. And it was so clear. It was so clear as day. And I said to him, he's like, "Oh, you like already know the story." And I was like, "I'll map it out." And I mapped it out. And I was like, he's like, it's 3 pages or whatever it is. And I was like, "Here's the story." Like, it was so fast for me. I was like, "Here's the story. Here's the thing I want to write. Here's this." And once again, Luck Me's preparation, I was given one shot. This was the one shot, right? He said pitch
Mhm.
one story. So this is not when you say I have 10 stories,
Right.
which of
Yeah.
them
It's
do
got
you
to be the
want?
best one.
It's got
Yeah.
to be the best one. And it was one I'd been sitting on that speaks to Archie's Americana, that speaks to like them as children, as Archie, because I've read all the like junior Archie stuff too. I know all their stories. I know all the intricate ways they're connected to each other. I pitched the story, and then he's like, "Great, this is the story." And they put it at the front of the Archie Digest that they did it in. And I just remember like getting it from the comic book store that I like in LA, Secret Headquarters. And I remember just like standing there, and honestly, like I didn't cry then, but see, like I'm tearing up right now. It was such an like, I don't know. There's not a lot of moments I've cried for in a positive way, I would say, because you have the crying when it's like just emotional, but it's beautiful. And
Mhm.
that was one moment where I'm like, look at this silly little comic, and I for sure cried, and I'm so thankful because that comic sold out. I went to my local comic book store and I signed all their copies, and and I gave them like little stickers to give out. So like, I wanted people to get something extra too. So everybody who bought that copy too got little like Archie stickers that they actually couldn't even buy anywhere because Archie doesn't usually make stickers. So I literally got approved Archie art, and I, with my own money, printed out Archie stickers to give to people that then they could have something just nice because they were buying my comic. But I will say this, like other people have started being like, "Okay, when are you writing your next one?" and stuff. And I wrote a couple more, over the course of writing Archie comics, but that first one, as
Yeah.
is true of, so many of us in our career, that first one means so much. So yeah, that's how I got to Archie. Is I was a fangirl forever. When I had an opportunity, I made sure I spot lit Archie in a way that was like very deep, very thoughtful, with no expectation of anything in return, just that I'm such a fan. And it was a joy just to do that for the brand that I grew up with.
You know, that we could do a whole episode on that
Yes.
because honestly, it's there's people have you could call it a dream, you call it a goal, you call it a vision, whatever you want,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
I have my Star Wars story. If I'm ever in the room with Kathleen Kennedy,
Yeah.
I've got my James Bond story. Like I've got them. I'm ready to
Yeah.
go, right?
Yeah.
Because in my mind, that's going to happen. Just like I have
Yeah.
my Academy Award speech, right? So, but
Yes.
because in my mind that's going to happen. But it's that whole idea that opportunity and preparation.
Right.
And I can't tell you how many people when I was young, I had opportunities that people would kill for,
Right.
but I wasn't prepared.
No.
I simply wasn't prepared, nor did I understand how special and unique that opportunity was.
Yes.
And
Yes.
that's one of the things, that's what wisdom is, that's what
Yeah.
gained knowledge is.
Yeah.
But I love that you had that. And of all places, like, because what if he was like the Garfield guy? You would have been out of luck.
Right. Right. Then I would be like, well,
No, I mean,
but
he
I
likes
also think like
lasagna. Yeah.
you make your own opportunities. So you go and you say like, hey, how can I also think helping, being a helper in general, trying to genuinely help
Hmm.
opens so many doors uh at the end of the day. And so trying to help, and I think without any expectation of return or paying it forward is also such a powerful way to operate. But I love the way you said about being young and missing opportunities, because and I'll say this before we need to jump, but like I definitely had that when I first I would say blew up on LinkedIn, right? When I started getting all those followers and interests, I had a meeting with a major television network, and they said, "We like your look." And I turned to them, and I I got hit with the ego bug a little bit in the first 3 months that I started making this, because I'd never had this happen to me
Yeah,
before.
sure, sure.
And by the 4th month, that ego, let me just tell you, was completely stamped out. It just I didn't have that ego anymore. But this was unfortunately for me in month 3, and I was young, and I was just like, "Oh my gosh, I've never experienced this in my life." So when they called me to the office, I thought it was a big deal. I thought I was irreplaceable. I was absolutely replaceable, Jason, and I didn't know it, but I went in being like, "So you want me?" And
Mhm.
this major network, major television network, I was like, "So you want me? So can you give me like this show that looks exactly like this? And I want this and this and this." And they're like, "Oh." And I think they were so, quite frankly, understandably off put by my behavior in the room, because I
Mhm.
demanded things that I should have asked for. And I shouldn't have even asked for those things. What I should have said is like, "What do you want to work with me on? What would be interesting and helpful for you as a brand to work with me on?" And that's now the first question I ask when I meet with major brands, or brand partners, is like, "What do you want to work with me on? What are your goals?" And at the time, I foolishly thought I was just so special that they would grant me whatever I wanted so I could act like that in the
Well,
room, you
you
know?
are special.
Thank you.
You just didn't know how to be in that room, and
I didn't know
that's
how to
where
be in that
you
room.
but that's where you come in now. So if you're listening to this or watching this, Goldie is the person who can help you understand what you don't know. You don't know what you don't know. And
Right.
people often take advice from people who have no business
No,
giving that advice. So
no.
someone probably told you back then, listen, Goldie, go in that room like you own that room.
You
Go
know,
in
it's
that
funny
room.
because that 100% is the case. Somebody who
There you
had
go.
never met with that network before, major network, once again, embarrassing to say it, they had told me, they're like, "Goldie, you need to go in and you need to be firm. You need to tell them,
Hmm.
this is what I want. This is I need this and this and this and the other thing from you." And they're like, and they'll give it to you. Don't worry, you'll get it because you deserve those things. And then that is also where ego comes from, a place of like, you deserve, right? And I do believe we deserve to be treated with respect, all of us. But you don't necessarily like deserve a TV show
No.
formatted exactly to your expectations, because you have, I think at the time, like maybe I had 5,000 followers, which is once again such a funny, like, once again, if you're listening, you have 5,000 followers. Congratulations. It's amazing. That's like a huge number. But also, like, it's not a million followers, right? But I thought I was so irreplaceable in that
Now,
moment.
at the same time,
Right.
somebody could have 10 million followers.
Right.
You could have 100 followers, but
Right.
those 100 followers are decision makers.
Our decision makers.
See
Yep.
what I mean? So
Yep.
it's all relative. So Goldie, are you currently taking on new clients or are you booked for like the next year, 2 years?
I am currently taking on clients potentially in the winter slash 2026. So more so in the next year period,
Mhm.
as I'm finishing out my book launch. But I'm happy to talk with folks. I'm always happy to chat, and if I'm not a good fit, to forward folks along. So always happy to chat and see if there is a fit, and also give a little help. So
And the best way for people to contact you is through your website, which I'm going to put in the description for
yeah,
this. Okay.
absolutely. It's goldichan.com. So
That's
pretty
a hard
easy to
one though.
remember.
No,
Yeah,
that's
I know,
I'll
I
never
know,
remember that.
I
And
know.
then are you doing a tour? Like are you doing a book tour, signings and stuff?
Yeah, so I'm doing a few different things. I'm ironically starting my book tour in New York because I have quite a bit of press that I'm going to be doing there. So I'll be starting my book tour in New York
When?
in November. So my first stop is November 2nd. It will be at an amazing bookstore called You and Me Bookstore, in Chinatown in New York. And I am
Man,
so,
I'm just going to miss
so
you.
excited. Really?
I'm in New York for Nasdaq week with a
Oh my
client
gosh. Very cool.
the week of
Very
the
cool.
20th. So I'm there the
Yeah.
23rd, 24th, 25th. So I'm just going to miss you.
Well, NASDAQ week, that sounds cool. I'm not
Yeah, it's
jealous,
pretty
but
cool.
that I would love to go because that's so freaking cool.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Congratulations. Yeah.
And so, but we live in the same city, so we should go out and
No, we
grab
live in the
something.
same city, so
Yeah.
let's definitely catch up. But yes, that is the beginning of my book tour. I'm doing a lot of things remote and virtual. Um, and to be fair, I'm actually prioritizing a lot more of doing podcasts and talking with people all over the world,
Good.
instead of necessarily doing a ton of physical in-person events. I think they're to me they're not that in-person events aren't wonderful, but this way it's a little bit more helpful to reach more people.
Yeah, it's not always numbers. It's
Yeah.
the people who you do
Yeah.
like impact. That's what matters. And you never know. You
And you
never
never
know.
know.
That's what's
You never
crazy.
know. And I will say
So,
this, if anyone out there is thinking about books or in your own book sale journey, not even the writing part, but the aftermath, the sale, is that every single book sale matters, right? Every single purchase matters. I think people think like, oh, it doesn't matter if I buy this book or not, but every single one helps the authors that you admire too. So if you admire or follow folks and you think, gosh, I like really, really enjoy what they're writing about, buy a hard copy of their book because it really helps. And just like, always supporting the people that you like. So obviously, if you're listening to this podcast, leave that review
oh
for the
yeah.
podcast because reviews are basically like buying a hardcover book of the
Thank you.
podcast world. So make sure you leave a review for this wonderful podcast I'm sure you've listened to many episodes of. And all those reviews help Jason get the podcast to more and more people.
Well, and that's why I do this.
Yeah.
So, Goldie, thank you for taking the time. You're golden. Hey.
Thank you. Hey.
So yeah, we'll definitely find a time to get together because it's been
It's
I
been
have
too
two
long.
kids now. You gotta meet my kids.
I
So
know, that's so
uh
wonderful.
yeah, and then I'll rope you into babysitting. So anyway, thanks for coming on the show. I'll put all your details in the description so people can reach out to you. Is that cool? All right. I'll see you later. Bye, Goldie.